Welcome in, friend, to the Her.Unlocked Podcast. We're going to go on a journey in this episode. The journey of how I walked away from my corporate job just a few weeks ago and stepped into full-time entrepreneurship with Unlock Her Co., which I am the CEO and founder of. And my hope in sharing my journey, my story, is that it gives you hope. And it gives you some ideas on how you can make this your reality too, because it is absolutely possible, even if it feels so far away and you're not even sure what to do next. It is possible. And I'm going to give you some things to think about, to apply, to start doing that could be wildly helpful and unlock some things for you. What I'm not going to do is give you the exact way in which this can go down for you because every situation is different. It's unique. And there are so many factors to take into consideration based on what's going to work for you and for your family. And it's been a journey. That's why I'm saying I'm going to take you on a journey, because what I want to do, which I don't believe I've done yet, is talk a bit more about my career journey, where it started, what was my thought process, and when was that moment I knew God was calling me for more, a more fulfilling career, which would then create a more fulfilling life for me and my family, one that was more aligned to the purpose that God was calling me into. It was full of ups and downs. It was full of frustrations. It was full of needing to be a lot more patient, which not always my strong suit. I wonder if you can relate. And yet it was beautiful how it unfolded and how it continues to unfold, because it is only the beginning. And it's only the beginning for you. So if you are listening in and there is a nudge on your heart, whether you've started a business or you're considering it, maybe you have been building a business in the pockets of time and you're wondering, will I ever be able to take it full time? I'm here to tell you it is absolutely possible for you. No matter where you are, no matter what your career looks like. I left a 6-figure job to step into entrepreneurship where the income is inconsistent and felt more risky for our family. And yet, I have never been so sure that I am being called to greater impact and greater income through entrepreneurship. And if it's on your heart, so are you. You are destined for more if you have the nudge. And what I want to do by sharing my story is not only give you hope and to encourage you and to help you see that it's possible for you, is to know that it does require doing things differently. It does require changing your beliefs, your thought patterns, and your behaviors. It does require you doing deeper inner work and getting so freaking vulnerable with yourself and with the people in your life. It does require you doing things messy and scared. There is no right time to lean in, to build this business that is inside of you. And this business could be something of your own. This business could be partnering with another company, which is where entrepreneurship started for me. I'm going to share a bit about that. Either way, it's time to lean in. You're listening to this episode for a reason. And maybe you just also might just need a reminder of why this is what you're being called to do through my journey, my story. So I'm going to take you back. I'm going to take you back to the start of my career. And if you may not be aware, because again, I haven't shared a ton about my career because I've been really cognizant until I've left fully to talk too much about my career, why I decided to pivot, why I decided to leave corporate America, because it was really important that I protected my job and my career that I had in corporate America while building my business. And that may be something for you to consider, or that you need to consider, is that there's a way you can go about showing up on social media or in other places, building your business from a place of integrity, while also not taking your career down in the process, and being in integrity with the company that you work for. That's super important, because it is really, really important to be grateful for your career in whatever job that you have while building this business you want to have. That was a hard learning for me, because there were a lot of moments over the last 2 years that I fell into victim mentality. There were some things that happened in my career that I was honestly so freaking frustrated about, and I couldn't believe it was happening to me. And at the time, it was really hard for me to see that it was for me. And looking back, I'm like, I would have never, God was like, if you kept the job you had and these things were going well for you and you had XYZ, for me, it was a team and a leadership position, I would have never left when he wanted me to. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in my journey. Okay. There'll be a lot of tangents in this episode. So I want to take you back to the start of my career. And one of the things that I knew early on in my undergrad is that I wanted to work with people. Psychology had always been an interest of mine. I actually considered going to get my PhD in industrial organizational psychology and really study people in the workplace. And through exploring that, I uncovered the field of human resources, which at the time I was like, I don't know if that's for me. When I was in undergrad, there wasn't as many people that I knew in that space. And as I started to have more conversations and explore programs that I could go to coming out of undergrad, it really started to pique my interest. Plus, going to school for 2 more years versus 4, maybe 5 years piqued my interest. School, though I did well, was not something that I felt came easy for me. I had to work really hard, and I did. I worked really hard, which I'm going to be talking about limiting beliefs in future episodes, and that plays into needing to earn my worth and for things to be hard. And so I ended up going straight from undergrad to grad school, getting my master's in human resources and industrial relations. It's a mouthful. It's actually where I met my husband. Through that program, I got an incredible internship with I think it's a Fortune 500 company. I've worked for 2 Fortune 500 / I think one or both of them was in Fortune 100. Had an incredible internship that took me to Dallas or Plano, Texas. Got a full-time offer from that internship to go and work for this company. I spent, I think it was 8 years with them, following doing a variety of roles in HR and finding myself in leadership development and learning and development, and just loving that space, which is why I have brought a lot of that into Unlock Her Co. And I'm going to be doing more and more designing and facilitating experiences to help you change your behaviors. And that is something I know I fell into because, again, God was preparing me. You're going to hear me talk a lot about how God was really refining me and preparing my skill set, my expertise, and my experiences to move into this space. And so I fell into that space in the first company I worked for. I learned a lot. I continuously was putting in my individual development plan that I was going to be the chief people officer one day, or the head of HR, whatever you call it at your organization. That was always the end goal for me at the time. And the reason that kept being an end goal is I was like, well, I got my master's and here's the things I do. And I want to be the best of the best and the top of the top in my field. And so I was like, well, clearly this is the ladder I'm going to climb. This is what success looks like. This is what people are telling me success looks like. And so I fell into that trap, which is easy to do in our society in corporate America, is to climb a specific ladder because someone or several people or society has told you that's how you're going to be successful. I had never learned how to create my own version of success, which is why I'm so on fire to help women do that, because I've seen the power of releasing the shoulds and I have to's in external guidance. Yes, there is a time and place for that. It's just not one to totally hang your hat on. And in corporate America, though we quote unquote own our own development, we are really guided to a specific path through whatever organization we're working for's process. It's how they see us, how they see our gifts and our experiences, and where it fits in within the business. No matter how great your company is, I've worked for two organizations that really promote developing their people, and they're still falling, every corporate America, every organization falls trapped to really creating a box that you must fit into, because again, it's a business. And it's not to say anything bad about those organizations I've worked for. It just is a business, and there are certain boxes that everyone needs to fit in, and there's certain roles that are available to you based on your resume and what you bring to the table, right? So I fell trapped to that, and there wasn't one person or certain people that did that. It's just, again, the constructs of how corporate America works. And I also was in HR, so I know what went on behind the scenes and how people got talked about and what boxes we put people in. And so grew my career there, got a ton of experiences, so grateful, met a ton of incredible people. I had one in particular mentor that really just believed in me beyond the confounds of the boxes that were on there. And I'm so grateful for her. And so one of the things that I knew is my family was always going to move back to Minnesota. And so at some point I was going to be leaving this organization, because at the time there wasn't remote work. They didn't have locations in Minnesota. And she was incredibly supportive as I went to explore an opportunity back in Minnesota. And I had shared I moved around with that first company to follow my career. My husband also did that as well. So we did long distance for 4.5 years. Even at one point, my husband was in Ireland, and then he moved to where I was living at the time, Louisville, Kentucky. So I've lived in Dallas, Louisville, Kentucky, back to Dallas, back to Louisville, Kentucky. And then we had our first kid, and about a year, right at the year mark, I got a job opportunity to move back to Minnesota. So we were able to move back to Minnesota, live 5 minutes from my family, follow my career, continue to work in the learning and development space for the last almost 5 years with the organization that I'm so grateful brought me back to Minnesota. And what I realized in moving back to Minnesota and stepping into a different organization and kind of having that opportunity to restart and start fresh, my eyes and my heart were open to this idea that maybe climbing the corporate ladder wasn't going to be for me. And what I would tell you is, me moving on to another company, I started to get the itch. And honestly, I'd had the itch for entrepreneurship. That's something I did not sprinkle in, which is super important, is that even as I was getting my master's and working in my first job, there was a pull to own my own business one day. It was in the back of my mind. I had conversations with some friends who had similar interests or done similar things in our program. And I always thought it was going to be something in HR, like an HR consulting firm or something like that, because that's what my background is. So the story I told myself is that it had to be in that space, because that's what I was educated in, and that it had to be later on. Like way down, once I've had decades and decades in my career, maybe it would be in, my in retirement, something like that. Like there was a story I had told myself based on what I'd seen and what people had told me is that this is how that works if you want to do entrepreneurship. And then I actually got started and dipped my toe in the water of entrepreneurship. So I had asked in my Instagram stories the other week, what was my first exposure to entrepreneurship, and it was actually with Rodan and Fields Consulting, so skincare, which is so interesting that I'm talking about this because I know they just came out changing their comp plan and the way that their business is structured, like many other MLMs. And so I got exposure to entrepreneurship and what it was like to start to build a brand on my own through selling a product and trying is key to build a team, which I never did end up building a team, and I did not see a ton of success. And it just gave me a sense of what that more could feel like. And at first I was like, this is going to be my thing. I'm going to sell skincare. I'm going to be, on that stage doing all these things. And little did I know is there was a really intentional reason God brought that opportunity into my lap. And I'm going to tell you about that as I fast forward into my next exposure to entrepreneurship, which was 2.5 years ago. And so I tried the Rodan and Fields thing. I sold some products. I did the whole cold DMs, all the things, and kind of let that fizzle out over the next few years, continuing to build my corporate career, getting that opportunity to come back to Minnesota, live 5 minutes away from my family. And then we had baby number 2 back in 2021. And one of the things that I knew as I was getting ready to have baby number 2 was that I was feeling a bit lost in my career, in myself. I hadn't been taking care of myself. I had kind of been on autopilot in my life. There was a little bit of what I would call the COVID fog, because as you know, that was 2019 and 2020. Yeah. I'm like, what is the math on that? 2019? We moved back in 2019. 2020 is when COVID hit. Yes, I think that is right. Anyway, moving on. And so as I was getting ready to have baby number 2, I was like, this is not how I want to live my life. And from the outside looking in, it looked good on paper. And it was good for the most part. And I knew it could be great. And I knew it was going to require me to do something different, to take radical responsibility over my life. And at the time, I didn't know that that was going to lead me to entrepreneurship. What I knew is that I needed to start taking care of my well-being, starting with my physical health. And so there was a program that I had done after having my first back in 2018 that I loved and I felt the best I'd ever felt. And it wasn't about losing weight. It was more about feeling energized and focused and getting off the sidelines of my life, literally and figuratively. And so I signed up for that program, did 6 weeks, got back to starting to feel, I wouldn't say feel like myself, feel like the version of me that I was craving, because I don't believe in the bounce back culture. And then what I found is that they were promoting their certification program, and I was on maternity leave. And I know I have a lot of friends who birthed babies and businesses around the same time. And that was my story too. I birthed a baby and I birthed a business. And so I decided, because I had been interested in coaching the program several years ago, but never pulled the trigger, and decided now was the time. Again, little did I know this was going to lead me to Unlock Her Co. And so I said, yes. I signed up, interviewed, got an opportunity to sit for the certification, completed the certification, and launched my Faster Way to Fat Loss business. And I was so excited about it. I started showing up on social media. I started to work on building my brand, started to learn a ton around marketing and sales and applying my coaching that I was doing in corporate America, because I was doing a lot of coaching. I had teams and different things where I was pulling some of that skill set in from my corporate job into what I was doing with Faster Way to Fat Loss. And as I was working with clients, I started to lean pretty heavily into mindset coaching, because part of your health journey isn't just about the strategies and methods, it's also about your mindset. So I was doing a lot of what I would call conscious mind coaching, because I had not been exposed to subconscious reprogramming yet. I didn't even know what that was. I am definitely someone who uncovered that along the way and then fell in love with it and saw the absolute impact of it. And that's something I'm going to be talking about when you think about going, moving out, quitting your job and going full time in entrepreneurship. That is some of the work that's going to make a difference and collapse time for you, because I've had firsthand experience, and so have clients that I've coached through this. And so I'm like, I knew this was going to be kind of, it's like, where was I going with that? Yeah, I was mindset coaching, and alongside what I was doing with Faster Way. And then honestly, it just felt hard. I went back to work. I was juggling a lot of things. One of the things that I did, and I'm going to be encouraging you as I talk about things that you could consider, because I think a lot of us who have a corporate job are like, we have that time excuse. And I call it capacity, because it's not even just about the time, it's the mental capacity, the physical capacity, to hold everything we feel like is necessary to build a thriving business that will allow us to walk away from our corporate job. And I started looking around on where can I create more capacity. And so I stopped watching TV. So there are moments where I made uncommon decisions in order to have an uncommon life, which included building my business. And at the time, it was the Faster Way to Fat Loss business. And so I stopped watching TV. I carved out time in the evenings to work, nap times at the time. Both kids were taking, I think, 2 naps a day. And so really using the pockets of time I did have to work my business. And then what I realized is it was feeling really hard. And entrepreneurship, don't get me wrong, can be challenging, and it requires capacity. It requires work, and something just wasn't clicking. And here's where I'm going to take you back to Rodan and Fields for a second, because I told you that there was a bigger purpose for me doing Rodan and Fields consulting. And it wasn't about building a Rodan and Fields business. It was about getting exposed to a specific person. And as I started realizing my business, that building my Faster Way to Fat Loss business was feeling really hard, and I thought this was going to be my thing again. Little did I know, again, it was only to dip my toe into entrepreneurship to then unlock Her Co. There was a girl that when I was doing Rodan and Fields, Tiff, who was on the podcast a couple of months ago in my Becoming Her series. I'll link it here so you can hear a bit more about our story and what she does and what she did to help unlock something bigger from me. So she was a big leader in Rodan and Fields when I was doing it, and I knew her name. And then I started following her on Instagram, and she was doing something a little different. She was starting to business coach and mentor, and her content piqued my interest. And I was like, you know what? I know that investing in coaching and mentorship could change the game for me. I need someone from the outside who's not connected to Faster Way to help me think about how I can build a thriving Faster Way to Fat Loss business. And so I invested. And here's the thing I would say about having a corporate job or another job is strategically using some of that money to invest in your business. And I know there's different thoughts on this, and I would say investing money and energy and time into your business is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. I'm not saying go into to significant debt. And I'm saying, if you really want this, if you really want to go full time with your business, it is going to require additional support. Whatever that might look like for you, I am speaking from experience. I invested and invested and invested and invested. I stopped spending money on other things so I could invest in my business because I was investing in my future and my family's future. I stopped buying clothes for myself. I stopped buying things for our house that were not necessary. I stopped buying expensive kids' clothes that they just grow out of because I spent a lot. I was a big shopper. And I was like, you know what? This money could go towards my business. This money could go towards my business. And so I invested in that coaching relationship with Tiff that literally changed the trajectory of my life. And that's what I would tell you is that your decision to make an investment, the right investment, an aligned investment. So do your homework, do your research, can change the trajectory of your life and your business. And that's what it did for me. Within the first session after meeting with Tiff, when I was like, this is what I want to do. I believe that I'm supposed, God's calling me to grow and build this faster way to fat less business. She could sense that there was something else there. And she was like, have you ever thought of building something of your own, creating your own offers, which is something she is incredibly skilled at? And I was like, I mean, yeah, but like way down the road. And I don't even know what that would look like. And so we started unpacking what it could look like. And because I have done a lot of coaching in my corporate job and a lot of learning and development and workshops and different things like that, that skill set and experience could be applied to creating my own coaching offers. And from there, Unlock Her Co was born. And I still continue to dabble in faster way, but the goal was, it was to move fully into Unlock Her Co as my business. And so it was like just shy of a year of faster way of coaching and faster way to fat less. I sunsetted that business to be really focused on Unlock Her Co. So I would say too, if you have your hands in a lot of different things, depending on if you do human design, it depends on your human design. For me as a generator, it's really helpful to be laser focused on one thing or a few things within a scope that I am passionate about and on fire for, to be able to move things forward. And so that's what I did. And I realized that faster way to fat loss was God's way of safely dipping my toe into entrepreneurship, because I don't know that I would have, I know, because there's no coincidences. I know that I would not have been led to Tiff, been led to create Unlock Her Co had I not dipped my toe into entrepreneurship with partnering with another company. That was just a lower risk, safer way for me to start entrepreneurship. So if you're listening in and you don't have a business yet and you're not even sure where to start, and yet there is a part of you that knows that you're meant to go off on your own, partnering with a company could be great. And I know there's a lot of companies that are shifting their models, and their models still can lead you into entrepreneurship with a lot more support and personal development and access to things to help you do that, potentially. And you can also start your own business. So whatever feels right to you and most aligned, I think that's the thing, is getting really clear on what you want, what your gifts are, what your experiences are, if you haven't built your business yet, and to be open to trial and error, testing things out. I mentioned this earlier, that doing it scared, doing it messy, because it's going to require both. Again, I mentioned there is no right time to dive in to entrepreneurship if you're feeling called to it. And so I worked with Tiff. I invested in mentorship with her. I continue to do one-on-one. I stepped into her mastermind. I continue to invest and invest and invest in my business and in myself and in my personal development, because that mattered. It requires, in entrepreneurship, it requires a whole heck of a lot of inner work, a whole heck of a lot of personal and professional development, learning skills you never thought you need to learn, and making investments in the right people can collapse time for you. And that's what it did for me. And then with Unlock Her Co, I tested things out. I started with a 3-week one-on-one coaching offer that was around mind, body, and spirit. I started to facilitate things with in communities. I started to put myself out there differently on social media. I dabbled in developing a course. I dabbled in other one-on-one offerings. I focused on female entrepreneurs. I focused on corporate climbing women. I tried on a lot of different things. At the core of my brand, I stayed true. And there was a lot of trial and error to figure out what was going to be in alignment to me. And I think a lot of us wait and wait and wait because we want to have the perfect offer, the perfect service, or the product. And yes, you don't want to go out with something half-assed, especially if you're wanting to go down the product route. That's a different story. Service-based, you can put things out, try things on, see if your community even wants it before you go and fully build it. And again, that's like doing it messy, testing things out. And so that's what I did for the last, coming up on 2 years with Unlock Her Co. And then about a year ago, I discovered the life-changing world of subconscious reprogramming. And I say life-changing because this is where things deeply shifted for me in myself and in my business. I had been, because I was in the coaching space, I had been exploring getting a coaching certification. Yes, my background, my experiences, my master's definitely gave me some exposure to the space, and I knew I wanted to continue honing my craft. And that's what I would also tell you is hone your craft. If there's a space you're being called to, where can you go and hone your craft? So you can be an expert in your space. So you can show up and really change lives, and not just, especially in the coaching space because it's unregulated, not just coach from your experiences, to actually use a skill set to do that. Speaking to coaches. And when I got exposed to subconscious reprogramming, I never looked back because I was like, man, that's what's been missing from my own development and with my coaching. And so I discovered my practitioner, Julie's anchored coaching program. And so not only was I going to get traditional certifications in life and success coaching, which I am a success coach and now a certified success coach, I was going to get certifications in the subconscious reprogramming space, which is really where behavioral change happens. And that was through becoming a neurolinguistic program practitioner, a hypnotherapist, time techniques practitioner, EFT, emotional freedom technique practitioner, to really be able to support myself and my clients with true behavioral change. Because I talk about this all the time. 95% of our behaviors are driven by our subconscious. And most of the work a lot of us have done, especially if you are a personal development junkie or you're in corporate America, it's all focused on the conscious work, which is only 5% of where your behaviors are driven by. And you are missing a whole heck of a lot. I have this iceberg image, whole heck of a lot of what's underneath what you think and what people tell you to be focused on. And you keep layering and layering and layering things like I did on a cracked foundation, on a belief system, programming, thoughts, identity that actually doesn't believe you can go full time with your business. And that for me was the biggest shift, because there was a part of me that told me I could never make what I make in my full-time career. I was making 6 figures. We were 2-income home, making 6 figures each. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way. And with that type of belief system, I was never going to be able to go full time. And without subconscious reprogramming to release those limiting beliefs and reprogram them to more empowering ones, because you can do that. Without that, I would not be here right now telling you how I left my corporate job. And I know I've been kind of all over the place. And I feel like that is telling. Like, it is not a linear path to entrepreneurship. It is not a linear path to leave your corporate job and go full time in what you want to do. It is full of ups and downs, twists and turns, step forward, 5 steps back. And if you do not have a firm foundation to build your business and your life on, which I didn't, I was building this business on a cracked foundation for the first year and a half, yeah. And as I did my own subconscious reprogramming work, which really started back in, I'd probably say like September or October, I started doing hypno breath work, hypnosis, subliminal audios to really start to reprogram my belief system. And time collapsed. And then I stepped into my certification program. I set an achievable outcome, which is a proven process that gets your conscious, which is your goal setter, and your subconscious, which is your goal getter, on board for what you want. And I set an achievable outcome to go full time with Unlock Her Co at the end of the 6-month program. And I achieved it. And that's not only because I set that goal, which was truly using the achievable outcome process, getting my subconscious involved, was the catalyst to get here, and the modalities that I learned and got to apply and experience along the way reprogrammed my internal operating system to be in alignment to what I wanted. And there was a lot of work to be done there. And what transpired is I got creative and curious, creative, and resourceful and how I was going to make this happen. Not from a place of pressure. In the past, I spent a good year and a half in a victim mentality in my business. Woe is me. I don't have enough time. This is never going to work. Why is it so hard for me? And then when I started to do the subconscious reprogramming work, things, even though it felt hard at times and I had work to do, things felt like they flowed easier. And I could see things happening for me even through the challenges. I was showing up more resilient, again, more resourceful in my circumstances, finding new ways on how I might be able to make this happen. And looking back, when I go back to dipping my toe into entrepreneurship, a couple of things that were important that I did, on top of the subconscious reprogramming, which was really the last thing that I did that really collapsed time for me. The few other things I would talk about that I think will be helpful for you if you are on this journey as well is getting clear on what you want and why you want it. Even like, why do you want to grow a business? What is the impact you want to make? What is the income you want to make? Getting clear on that. Getting vulnerable with yourself and with your significant other or any other important person that it's going to require them to be on board for it to happen. I was having early conversations with my husband. We were not always on the same page. Entrepreneurship has a lot of ebbs and flows and feels riskier than a safe, consistent corporate job where you're getting paid every 2 weeks. And so we had a lot of conversations because, newsflash, we were also in a bit of debt. There's an episode I'll drop here. So if you're sitting in a situation where you're like, well, I absolutely can't because my corporate job is helping us pay off debt and there's just no way that I can't have that consistent income. Let me tell you, there is. And it requires you to get really purposeful and intentional about how you're paying off that debt and how you're able to still invest in you and your business, because that is really important. And so listen to that episode if you're walking a season of debt and that is a block for you thinking that you'll ever be able to go full time with your business. I also want to mention and get clear is pick a date. So my date was actually further out. It felt really far. It was when my firstborn was going to kindergarten. We'd have one less daycare payment. There were certain things when my husband and I talked that needed to happen for this to feel safe for our family. That is real. This is not about jumping ship blindly. I would not encourage that. What this episode is about is to tell you how you can start to be really purposeful and not let your excuses get in the way and not let yourself fall victim to victim mentality, to thinking this can never happen for me. Because that thinking, yeah, it's never going to happen for you because there's a belief system in there that's telling you that. And you're going to operate in alignment to that, because where your focus goes, your energy flows. That is subconscious 101. And so getting really vulnerable, getting really clear, outlining what is required for it to feel safe for you to do that. Getting curious, creative, resourceful along the way. Be willing to do it scared, do it messy, to be willing to make uncommon decisions. So I mentioned making an uncommon decision at the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, which was to stop watching TV, which I watch it in pockets with the kids or maybe on a date night with my husband. But for the most part, I do not watch TV. It is not a part of something that I do anymore, because that to me created a ton of capacity for me. The other thing, a year ago, I made a decision on, which was more God prompting me to do this for a variety of reasons in my life, was to get sober. Drinking was creating less mental capacity for me. And I'll also link this episode in the show notes if you're also wondering how you can create capacity and maybe you're desiring sober curiosity or desiring to get curious about sobriety. This episode will really open your heart and mind. That decision to get sober curious and then to declare sobriety created a ton of capacity, and mentally and physically, to continue to build my business and to continue to pour into other aspects of my life. And another uncommon decision I made was to, at the time, stay up a little later. And then as time went on, started to get up in the mornings, because I think it's like the beta waves or the alpha waves, some kind of waves in your brain are better in the morning. So I started building my business in the morning. I then made the uncommon decision back in November to go part-time in my corporate job. After shifts happening in my corporate job, I talked about feeling like things were happening to me. There were some major shifts that happened in my role through a reorg that felt like the biggest ego blow in my life. And really that was God saying, like, this is happening so that you can make different decisions and just go and follow your purpose. So if you're feeling there is friction or there are things that are happening to you, they're actually happening for you. And they're opening up opportunities for you to lean in and see how this can support the purpose you're being called to. And so from there, I was like, this isn't working. I want to go part-time. It'll give me more capacity for my business. I feel like I'll show up a better employee. And so I went part-time down to like 50%. And then from there, I started my subconscious reprogramming certification program. And things just started to transpire in collapse time. And I shared in my update after my pause on the podcast a few episodes ago that like this last year has been one of the most challenging years of my life. And so this isn't like me making a decision to go full-time in entrepreneurship wasn't a convenient decision. It wasn't the easy decision. I wasn't forced into it. It was all out of purpose and intention. It was all, and I want to make sure, like, going through my notes of like, it was all because I got clear, I got vulnerable, I got curious and creative and resourceful. I invested in myself and in my business. And truthfully, over the last 6 months, invested in other areas of my life. Because here's the thing. If you are only investing in yourself and your business and you're not investing in your, let's say, your marriage or your relationships or your kids, if you have kids, you will not be able to step in and hold all that is for you, because those things matter more than your business. And that's coming from a girl that had a hard time honoring that. And so I flipped the script, and I am really focused on pouring into my marriage, into motherhood, my physical health, and my business. And it looks a little bit different. And I'm going to talk about that in a future episode. And then do the subconscious reprogramming work. And something that I've recently started is nervous system regulation work, mind, body, and the last is spirit. Go get God involved. If you are a Christian woman listening in, get God involved. Talk to him. Pray to him. Ask him to show you different things. Be really specific with him. Build a deeper relationship with him, because he is holding the keys to your future. And a lot of times we're not listening. A lot of times we're not going to him because we want to control the narrative, which is what I was doing for the first year and a half of my business. And here's the thing. I talked about this in last week's episode around subconscious reprogramming and Christianity. I was able to start to access God at a deeper level and access who he designed me to be in the life he designed for me in the business he designed me to build by doing the subconscious reprogramming work, as well as starting to do nervous system regulation. Mind, body, spirit all matter when you are looking to build a business that you can step full-time into and walk away from your job. And so those are the things that I would take into consideration. And if you want support on creating your version of success to be able to walk away, because I am helping clients with this. I had a client who just put in her notice a few weeks back. I can help you with that. We can lock arms. And by help you with that, I empower you with the keys to unlock the thoughts, beliefs, behaviors that are going to create a more empowered life for you, which in your case includes a more empowered business. This is the work that matters. You are called for more. I know it. You are wildly capable. Everything that is required of you is inside of you to build this business while living the life that you want to live. It just takes leaning in and doing some of the work that I walked you through and making sure that you are walking in alignment to you, not what other people think, not what other people say. Quiet the noise around you. Don't worry about other people's opinions. I had to let that go. I was a girl who loved external validation. I thrived on that. I worried so much what people thought about what I was doing. It held me back. Even when I was in it, I was still holding myself back out of fear of what people would think or say. Or am I going in the right direction? Is anyone going to want this, buy this from me? Again, it goes back to those deep beliefs and that internal programming that you can shift to a more empowered place. All right, friend, that was my wild roundabout journey that I wanted to share with you. And again, my hope is that through my story, through the messiness, through all the ups and downs, the twists and turns, the learnings, that you have found hope in being able to step fully into what you know you're being called to, that you feel ready, that you have a little fire lit inside of you to go all in and make this happen in a way that feels, and I keep coming back to this because I've seen a lot of people try to build businesses out of misalignment. And what you want to do is make sure that you're building from a place of alignment and that it complements your life and creates harmony with your life. I've spent a bit of time building my business where I wasn't creating harmony and my business was at the forefront of everything I did. And the second I started to make some of those shifts, more opened up for me. No surprise. And my hope is that you're stepping away from this episode ready to make some shifts, ready to do some of the uncommon things that are going to breed an uncommon life that you, again, know you're being called to, because it's possible. If it's possible for me, it's possible for you. I heart you, friend.